Hey there, my name's Niandra, and I thought it'd be fun to try making a damage boost tier list for Mercy. One thing I want you to keep in mind is that ultimately there are no bad damage boost targets, only better ones, so please don't avoid beaming someone just because I rate them lowly here. Also, I made my decision based on a couple of different factors which I'll mention as I go along, and also try to go for a general list aimed at all players rather than the highest levels of play. I actually struggled super hard while making this, and heroes got shuffled around a lot, so if you disagree with any of my decisions, that is absolutely fine, and there's a good chance I would agree with you. So let's start with S tier. Fairly predictable, it's Ashe, Cassidy, Echo, Pharah, and Soldier 76. These characters are both my personal favourites and who I think are the strongest targets. Not only do they have great default damage, but I think all of them have pretty solid ults for you to build faster as well. I know some Mercy players don't like hard pocketing one character all game, instead they prefer the flexible, highly mobile support role, which I totally get. I definitely think that is the funner way to play. However, if you are graced with an amazing Ashe or cracked Cassidy, then you do just kind of want to shove your staff up their ass and aim for that 2k to 3k damage amplified in 10 minutes. For me, hard pocketing doesn't mean only attending to one person the entire game, but instead treating them as my default beam target if I'm not doing anything more important. It's like if I'm not peeling for my Ana or the other DPS, or healing a tank that needs more healing than just Ana, then my beam is on this S tier DPS. You might be wondering, what if both DPS fall under S tier? Personally, I jump for joy, but no, my priority goes like this. Flying heroes, then Ashe, then Soldier and Cassidy. My logic for this is that the flying heroes are the most dependent on Mercy, plus my other healer might struggle to help them. Then Ashe because she can nearly one-shot squishies and Dynamite is great, with Soldier and Cassidy last because they can generally perform very well without Mercy tied to them. As for Soldier versus Cassidy specifically, it's really up to you or whichever one is performing best. I generally like Cassidy a little bit more because of his flashbang and higher burst, but there's no wrong answer here. Moving on, let's talk A tier, and for high A tier, I've got Zarya, Hanzo, Bastion and Genji. A tier characters are slightly weaker, but still all round great picks. If you're not boosting someone from S, then you really can't go wrong choosing someone from here. Even though Zarya isn't a character you'll pocket the entire game and will be weaker at lower charge, I still want to place her highly. In fact, I think if you're mid-diamond and below, she could go in S tier because of how powerful her ultimate is and how common Mercy Ana is as a healing pairing. Teams will so often be running and fighting against this pair that has no defensive ult and no immortality fields. Plus, at these sort of ranks, most teams don't think about using offensive ults in a defensive manner. Getting your Zarya grab faster with damage boost is really powerful against Mercy Ana and unorganized teams especially. Outside of that, I don't think I need to say how good a damage boosted high charge Zarya is, especially if the enemy team is running D.Va who can't matrix beams. With Hanzo, if I don't have a hero from S tier on my team, he's generally who I prioritize the hardest. Although to be fair, Hanzo is quite a skillful character, so you can definitely have matches where the person playing him isn't doing much, so keep that in mind. For Bastion, I think he's worth placing highly even though his default DPS is extremely strong, because usually when someone picks him, everyone else works around it. He's such a high priority target for the enemy team that you generally want to be babysitting him as much as you can. Even though his time to kill is already really low, it's not bad making it even lower when the entire enemy team is trying to displace him. As for Genji, it might not be popular opinion to put him this high, but I just personally really like him. I'm not suggesting you follow him on crazy flanks and put yourself in bad positions, but he's often not that hard to keep up with, especially when the objective forces both teams to fight in a relatively small area. I think it's like Zarya in that the average player already struggles to kill a Genji that's jumping around everywhere, and getting Dragon Blade faster can also be really useful. With low A tier, I went with Winston and Symmetra. In regards to Winston, although he isn't a character you usually want to hard pocket, I still think he's worth rating fairly highly. For starters, Mercy just generally plays well with dive. Secondly, you've got the damage Winston does when he jumps on someone, which I feel like is a really underrated thing to damage boost. His primary fire isn't very high, but it can hit multiple targets, which is what you should be looking for. As for Symmetra, I don't know, I was torn between A and B tier. I feel like damage boosting Sim is really polarizing in that sometimes she'll be amazing and other times she just does fucking nothing. Like you'll be blue beaming her and you're seeing constant hit markers but no kills actually get confirmed. Her DPS when blue beamed is really high, but her range is short and she has no defensive capabilities, so it's a mixed bag, but Mercy in general can help her a lot. Plus, you can kinda get away with the lack of defensive capabilities at mid to low ranks. Also, damage boosting her orbs during poke phases, pretty decent. Moving on to B tier, these characters are still great picks, but not really heroes I would beam for super long periods of time, either due to the way they position or maybe they have a kit that results in damage downtime. For high B tier, I went with Junkrat, Roadhog, and Reaper. Junkrat was a character I really struggled to place properly. Like, I honestly think there's arguments for A, B, and C tier. My thing with Junkrat is that his damage can be quite inconsistent, so his placement for me is more based on the skill of the person playing him. Like, you may get a Junkrat with a maths degree or one that just hits nothing. Maybe you'll be against an enemy team that's just really into hanging out in tight corridors, so Junk just has to spam shots. Generally with Junkrat, I'll damage boost him towards the start of the match, try to gauge how many hit markers I'm seeing, and then go from there. With Roadhog, I originally had him pegged for A tier until it hit me that most good Roadhog players can one-shot 200 HP heroes without damage boost fairly consistently, even though I always feel super pleased with myself when I flick bluebeam onto him during his hooks. Against heroes with higher health pools, then he's fantastic, but I kind of feel like his primary weapon damage outside of hooks is just a bit... well, it's slow firing and doesn't have the best range, so while it's not bad, it's probably better to look for an ally higher on the tier list. Also worth mentioning, he's very good at shield break. Reaper is like the poster child of a B tier damage boost target. Like, he's not bad, but I wouldn't call him anything too special, and it depends on how well the enemy team is at shutting him down. For mid B tier, I went with Baptiste, Zen, and Wrecking Ball. The thing with these three heroes is that they can be really solid damage boost targets, but it's very much dependent on the skill of the player. Like, your average rank Baptiste probably doesn't even deal that much damage in the first place because they just hold down right click all game. Zen's generally solid, especially when you see him charge a volley. Wrecking Ball I actually like quite a bit if you're on a map that allows you to keep up with him. His damage output is pretty solid and his ground pounds are really easily telegraphed, so it's quite easy to flick onto. Before low B tier, I settled on Sigma, Reinhardt, and Widow. With Sigma, I'm gonna be honest, I realized he's like the one person on this list I didn't have any opinion for because I never really boost him, so I thought I'd just place him in the middle of the pack. I think what it is that Sigma's such an unsexy target to damage boost. Like, here's the feedback you get when you damage boost Dynamite, and here's Sigma's primary fire. It really does nothing in the way of impressing my brainworms. There's notable downtime between his shots, but there's a bigger hit marker for direct hits as opposed to splash damage, so I think it's one of those things where you watch your Sigma and boost when you think it's appropriate. Also remember that you can damage boost the initial lift damage of his ult, which is very solid. As for Reinhardt, I think it's pretty obvious why he's B tier. He's a great damage boost target during swings, after Earth Shatter, and for fire strikes you can telegraph, but will spend a good amount of time with his shield up. Because of how damage boost requires you to be blue beaming your ally as they shoot the damage, it's often not viable to damage boost fire strikes without coordination unless you're just holding your blue beam on a shielding Reinhardt, which in my opinion often isn't worth it and you should just beam someone else. In regards to Widowmaker, you could honestly argue for placement anywhere between A and D tier. I think I like Widow more than most players. Like, I don't think she's as bad as some people claim, so this placement definitely comes down to my bias a little bit. Keep in mind, Widow doesn't have to charge her shots as much when boosted, which can be really beneficial in the Widow 1v1. However, then you have to make sure your bright blue beam isn't giving away her position. Let's move on to C tier, which is just Tracer, Mei, D.Va, Orisa, Torbjorn, Anna, Sombra, and Moira. These characters aren't bad, but just not people I look to boost very often outside of key moments / key ability usage, or they simply get overshadowed by heroes of a higher tier. With Tracer, I think you could argue that she should go in low B tier instead, which I spent a good amount of time considering. Although you're never going to pocket her super hard, I think a lot of Mercy players actually underestimate and neglect Tracer quite a bit. Remember, your beam briefly retains connection when she blinks out of range, meaning she's great to boost while she engages, and like Genji, she's not that bad when your team is fighting close together. I think the main thing to keep in mind is that the new hybrid GA setting means that following people like Tracer is nowhere near as hard or painful as it used to be. It's like, okay, Tracer blinked out of you behind a wall, well now I can crouch GA against it and reposition. As for Mei, I'm just kinda not into her that much. You can't make her freeze enemies faster and she can one-shot frozen allies without damage boost, although if you see an enemy getting healed while frozen, then definitely push damage boost. I don't avoid Mei, but the delay between her primary fire is mainly why I look for other heroes, especially during Blizzard. Next, D.Va, and I think you could easily argue for B tier here as well. Micro missiles and primary fire into someone's face is really strong, but I placed her lowly for two reasons. The main one is that her range is pretty poor. Secondly, this is a general tier list, right? I try to consider the average player, and there's not much time to damage boost mid to low rank divas because they all just feed their fucking brains out. As for Orisa and Torbjorn, maybe they should go in B tier, but I don't really have anything to say besides keep in mind that Orisa's reload time is super long. I'm just gonna move on to Anna. I actually really like Anna quite a lot because it's super easy to see when she's scoped in and doing damage. She's a great target if you can see her aiming at the sky and the enemy is running Pharah or Echo. I also really like to damage boost her after she sleeps someone. With Moira, her primary DPS is pretty mediocre when boosted. It's around 65 per second, which means if the target isn't getting healed and Moira does not miss at all, it will take you to just over 3 seconds to kill a 200 HP hero, and that is a huge amount of time in this game. The benefits of damage boosting Moira come in 2 areas. First of all, she doesn't require much aim, meaning the lower your rank, the stronger she'll be as a boost target. Secondly, her ult is really solid, especially due to its shield piercing. As for Sombra, her damage isn't that bad, but I placed her low because she's often invisible while scouting the backline. Your beam can give away her position and also make it more obvious where she translocated back to. Moving on, we have D tier, aka Doomfist tier, because it's just him. It was a tough choice between C and D. I have gone through a few steps with him where originally I was like, he's kinda not great, then I thought he was kinda underrated, then I realised that a lot of Doom players don't need damage boost to kill people quickly, which was my reasoning for putting him here. I will say I think he's a pretty solid target when your team desperately needs picks, like if you're stalling point B of 2 CP and trying to recover. And last of all, at the bottom of the barrel, we have E tier, which is Brig and Lucio. One of the reasons these two are both so low is because it means you're running either Mercy Brig or Mercy Lucio, which are both not great. Don't get me wrong, these pairings don't instantly mean you'll lose, especially at mid to low ranks or against unorganized teams, but they often make things harder than they need to be, and your tanks probably aren't happy even if they don't want to say anything. With Brig, her primary does 47 damage while boosted, which is hot garbage to be honest. Whipshot does roughly 90, which isn't too bad, but that's on cooldown. With Lucio, he's an okay target if you see him going aggro on like an enemy support and you have faith in him not to fuck it up, or maybe he's close to sound barrier and you guys need it before the enemy engages with Dragon Blade. Lucio generally prioritizes speeding his team into the enemy, however that leaves them with just Mercy for healing. This pairing means that one, if not both, are often sacrificing their very important utility to heal very little. It's not like Zen who can orb both an enemy and an ally at the same time. Brig and Lucio as your second support may mean damage boosting less than usual. That's not to say you can never blue beam when paired with them, you definitely can, especially if you're comfortable blue beaming injured allies. What I mean is, you don't want to use what limited opportunities you do have to damage boosting someone who isn't impactful. And that is all from me. Thank you so much for watching this one. Feel free to let me know in the comments if you think I'm a fucking idiot or if I'm awesome and everything I say is completely correct. Consider subscribing and have a nice day.